IVM.
Food is ever evolving. What we call Parsi food today, in fact, did not exist in Iran where we came from. Our food today is a combination of flavors and cooking techniques we have adopted from all the places and communities we have lived with over the years. Our love for meat and dry fruits comes from our Persian roots, while the tendency to make everything sweet and sour is a Gujarati influence. Even our so-called traditional Parsi lagannu custard is actually the classic British custard that we have tweaked for our tastes. So on the show today, we raise the question of authenticity versus innovation. Fusion food gets such a bad rep today. Chefs trying to combine new flavors or formats often get faced with a lot of criticism. But isn't Parsi food essentially fusion as well? To discuss these questions with me, I have a chef today whom I've looked up to for years. He is Chef Viraf Patel. Chef Viraf is a restaurant consultant, consulting for the Olive Group and other iconic institutions. Prior to this, he was also the partner and managing director at Black Sheep Hospitality, which is the company behind Mumbai's iconic Café Zoe. While Viraf has predominantly worked with European food, he has done plenty of experimentation and come up with several modern takes on Parsi food, like a jardalu and lamb taco or the risotto khichdi. Viraf is one of the most celebrated young chefs in India, and I'm just so excited to have him here with us today. This is Not Just Dhansak, and now let's chat with Chef Viraf Patel. Hi Viraf, Thank you for joining me.
Thanks. How are you?
I'm doing well. So Viraf, could you tell me a little bit about what you do now, how you ended up here, and did you know you always wanted a career in food?
Well, I kind of figured out that I wanted a career in food a little late in life, actually. I was heading towards a culinary academy and things like that, and then I was slightly dissuaded at some point, saying that, what if you don't like it? What if it's not what you want to do?
Right.
But the decision kind of happened about 25 years ago.
Okay. So this was 25 years ago when you were...
I was around 18 or 19.
Okay.
Yeah. And that was the foundation. It started there. But I've been a kitchen kid all my life. My mom worked with hotels, so it was always something like I want to walk in there and I want to see what happens behind those big doors with the glass, circular glass things. And always had the privilege to do so.
Okay. And so what are some of your earliest memories around food? Any memories around Parsi food specifically?
So as a very small kid, I grew up a lot in my grandmom's house in Hyderabad.
Okay.
And those were, lovely memories because we had our own little garden and we had our own little compound, our mango tree. And I always spent a lot of time with her in the kitchen because that's where I would sit and play. And I had this little balan and thing to roll. So I'd, make a few things. And mango season, of course, was the best. Go up to the terrace and keep whacking those trees till we got lots of mangoes. And then we'd make ampanna and we'd make...
Nice.
My grandmom, I still remember, she used to cook them.
Oh, okay.
And then make the ampanna, and they were delicious.
Yeah. And even my favorite Parsi recipe, actually, which I realized around mangoes, is the scary magos, which you make, which is actually made with cooked ripe mangoes.
Oh, wow.
So I came across it in one of these old Parsi books, and I tried it out. And you don't actually think about pairing ripe mangoes with meat, but it just it does end up working.
There is a lot of influence of pairing ripe fruit with meat in Persian cuisine, which is where today's cuisine comes from. So.
Yeah. And so you spoke a little bit about your upbringing in Hyderabad. So did you come across any Parsis over there? Are they as crazy as the Bombay ones?
I don't think Parsi is anywhere that crazy. It's just that we love... we're very specific. We like our things to be perfect.
Yes.
The stereotypical cars and the scooters and everything has to be in perfect condition and the best of crockery and cutlery, and you have to eat well.
Yeah.
So I guess I think we're crazy in that sense, but we're not crazy how people make us out to be.
Yes.
And yeah.
Cool. So Parsis are all about the tradition. So was there a set Sunday meal at your house?
Not really. We were in the hospitality kind of industry. My mother working sometimes on weekends, Sundays, So we never really had a Sunday thing, but there is always this brief moment in life where things do happen in a certain way.
Yeah.
At that time, there was a Sunday tradition, but it was never one kind of meal.
Okay.
My dad had a very dear friend who would come down, yell his name out from downstairs every Sunday, and they'd go to the market and do their weekly shopping. And so whatever was fresh that day. So if it was meat, fish, and then those days were special because that was the day you got shandy.
Oh, yes.
So that you took an afternoon nap and didn't disturb anyone.
So my Sundays were always, I grew up, my grandpa used to just make like kebabs, keema kebabs for morning breakfast.
Wow.
And then dhansak for lunch. And then we'd like have a little bit of the kebab mix left over. So he'd make cutlets for dinner. And we did this like, I think every Sunday until I was 7 or something. So I just grew up thinking that's what the world ate, because like, we're talking about a time when, there wasn't restaurants, you didn't like sort of go out for a Sunday brunch.
Correct,
so
not at all. Yeah.
I
have a story about my grandfather, what he did, but I was too young when he passed away. But apparently, so under our house we had a meat shop, and he'd go sit there with his newspaper and he'd keep pointing out at that guy saying, this bone there, and he'd collect all these marrow bones.
Oh wow.
Have them remove the marrow and then take up that much, like a tiny bowl full.
Yeah.
And then have someone make a gur pari do.
Oh, wow.
And I can just imagine how good that would be.
Wow, I can imagine. But that would be like a lot of bones.
Yeah,
that
would
you'd
be
have
a
to
lot
do.
of bones to get that much marrow, yeah.
Oh, wow. So, most of your work at Cafe Zoe and then at Toast and Tonic has been actually around European food, not really about Parsi food. So how did you sort of narrow down on that being what you wanted to cook and dish out?
So my formative years and my education in culinary arts and things like that happened in Switzerland.
Okay.
And to me, it's always been a very clean cuisine because each of the elements lends its flavor to the plate. Also, for example, the Japanese way of cooking. And so I enjoy those clean lines, those clean flavors where you taste the meat, for example, or the vegetable that you're cooking with. So,
which would actually be a horror for a Parsi person, like if they actually tasted the vegetable that...
yeah, it needs to be
like
doused in some cream or something like that.
Either doused in cream or pressure cooked to a point where you can't taste what it was anymore.
I always wondered when the chefs were teaching me, I was like, you can't putting the vegetables in the pressure cooker? Because my aunt did that all the time.
Yeah. So... every Parsi New Year, I've seen, at least at Cafe Zoe, you used to innovate your menu by taking like Parsi elements and then sort of like Europeanizing it.
Yeah.
So, why do that?
So in fact, a lot of occasions we did that. So we did Jewish New Year, we did Parsi New Year, we did a couple of other festivals we tried to celebrate by giving my rendition of the cuisine. And... I used to just recreate the flavors and have the same cuisine run through. So for us, the khichdi became a risotto, and we did some nice farcha stuff, and we did sasni machi, but we did it with salmon and things.
Yeah.
Actually, that idea came from a friend's wedding.
Okay.
They wanted sasni machi, and I'm like, dude, we've got salmon on the menu. What do we do now? So he's like, figure it out.
Okay. So would you actually call this then like fusion food?
No, I think... See, if you look at our cuisine, the Parsi cuisine in India today, it's always been about adaptation and evolution.
Yep.
We came here from Iran, from Persia. We adapted to the Gujarati cuisine. That was the land that we started living on. So even, for example, the dhansak is an evolution of a Gujarati recipe, and it's come from... So I think I wouldn't call it fusion. I'd just call it an evolution, an adaptation, actually.
Because fusion food tends to get like a very bad rap these days, right?
Yeah. Like
everyone is making a pizza of something or the other, and there is butter chicken cones and all that kind of stuff. So, so then... How would you say is like fusion food different to like say sort of doing something like that, like replacing salmon in a sasni machi,
See, I think the fish the sasti machi with its tartness, the sourness that comes from the vinegar, the tomatoes, that needs a fatty fish to cut that, that tartness. And I think when I tried it out with salmon, it kind of worked really well.
Okay.
And I think just because of availability, we use pomfret and the pomfret has become the status symbol of the Parsi cuisine. So
it's actually not even that flavorful. I mean, I would rather have, there's plenty of other fish.
There are plenty of other fish which have a lot more flavor to lend. That's true.
Yeah,
that's true.
Yeah. Cool. So I think at this point, we'll just take a quick break and then we'll just be right back.
Great.
Hello and welcome to a brand new and exciting week on IVM. We'd like to give a shout out to our sponsors, Storytel and Paytm Money. On the scene and the unseen, Amit Verma's guest is quizmaster and sports expert Joy Bhattacharya. Joy talks about his journey as a team director for the Kolkata Knight Riders, his role in the Under-17 FIFA World Cup, and the evolution of televised sports in India. On Advertising is Dead, Varun talks to founder and editor of Dead Ant, Ravina Raval. They talk about Dead Ant as a platform to discuss news and events around comedy. On Ganatantra, Alok and Sarayu are joined by Dr. Carol Sperry to talk about the role of women in electoral politics. On Simplified, Chuck and Nareen are joined by Director Insights of Brandscape Worldwide, Utsav Memoria, for part 2 of how to travel on a desi budget. On Geek Fruit, Dinkar and Jishnu talk about the highly distinctive director, screenwriter and producer Edgar Wright. On IVM Likes, IVM staffers Abbas, that's me, Darius and Madhuri are discussing the highest IMDb rated series Chernobyl and also delve into the phenomena of grief watching. On the Habit Coach podcast, Ashton talks about the beliefs of bad and good habits and how a habit that is bad for someone can be good for someone else. On our Kannada podcast Thale Harate, Sri Ranjani speaks to Ganesh Chakravarti and Takshashila Institution's Soumya Nandan and her endeavour to revive the interest of ancient board games in India. On Equity Sahi Hai, Srinath Mithanthaya, Senior VP at Motilal Oswal AMC, talks to Anupam about value migration and how it's different from value creation. And with that, let's continue on with your show.
So welcome back to Not Just Dhansak, and we are in conversation with Chef Viraf Patel about all things Parsi food, Parsi fusion food, and modernizing Parsi food. So Viraf, do you feel that Parsi food and our flavors and methods of cooking have anything to offer to like the mainstream hospitality guest? You know, we're reaching a time where I feel, at least in the last 3 or 4 years, Parsi food is almost sort of becoming cool again.
Yes.
Do you feel that the mainstream guest is interested in what we're doing?
Yeah, so what I feel is becoming cool is regional cuisine, and we are part of that regional cuisine. We are, it's exotic in a sense. It's not available to everybody. It's not easy to prepare almost always.
Yeah.
So I guess mainstream, yes. I think there is scope for the cuisine to, develop and do well.
Right.
In the whole scheme of things.
And then as an extension of that, do you feel that there's actually viability in the market to have like a complete Parsi restaurant? So, I mean, I'm talking from, I've always had this dream one day to open a Parsi, like small cafe. But, if you talk to investors, if you talk to people like that, they'll always be like, but, there's only 60,000 Parsis in India. And
I don't think they are your clients anyways.
Yeah. No Parsis coming to a Parsi restaurant.
Because it's like what you can eat at home.
Yeah.
I wouldn't tend to go out to eat something that I can eat at home.
Correct.
So I'd rather go out for an experience. I'd go out for a cuisine that may not be so comfortable for me to prepare myself. So, and maybe time consuming, maybe painstaking to do so. So that's why I would go out. And I think the client base is actually there in the people who enjoy the cuisine but don't know exactly how to go about it.
Yeah, because a major point, a negative point for our cuisine has been that until now it's been very inaccessible, which is why I feel it's almost become a little bit cool, and regional food is also becoming cool, is because finally it's actually accessible outside of people's homes.
Absolutely,
right? And you don't have to like trek to Balad Estate, for example, to have a berry pulao. You could potentially get it at a few other places as well.
Yes, that's true now.
But then what do you feel about, there are some places which have opened up which are doing Parsi food, but then also have like pasta on the menu, and then have like, grilled cheese sandwich or whatever.
I guess you have to be able to being that the cuisine is it's actually very vast.
Yep.
But not everybody knows beyond Dhansak.
Yeah.
And the patio and your sali margi and sali boti, and those are the things that people tend to look for on a menu. But I guess there are some brands that are really working hard towards education in that sphere, doing specials, doing various different things to educate the customer base on what else is out there. And we're steeped in tradition for so many years, and there's so much that we can offer. I think it will really stand its ground someday. Well, regarding places that are doing everything else also besides Parsi food, I guess they're just a little afraid that maybe they don't have enough of that client base. Like you said, your investors would say there's only 60,000, but I think they need to look beyond that.
Yeah, because then I feel you just end up running the risk of becoming like every other place,
correct,
right?
Yeah.
Because nowadays, if you open up your apps, everyone is doing the same kind of food, or
I think I saw a Zomato ad that said 3,705 restaurants serving just North Indian food. It's like, okay.
Yeah, and it would probably just be all the same tasting also. I'm sure they all use the same onion tomato gravy.
Perhaps.
Yeah. So, what's interesting for me is that more and more, especially in the UK, one is seeing like Irani-inspired cafes coming up. Like there's Dishoom, there is Cafe Spice Namaste, for example. And they're actually doing really well, which is, to the layperson in India, perhaps quite surprising because, it's like a complete British market. There are Parsis there, but not as many.
There are Parsis there, and there are also people from that region there. So
Correct.
it's about the region, I think, more that where you're leading to on that subject. So, for example, I've eaten a very nice stew, which reminded me of a sali boti, but minus all the masalas and the flavors in Bangkok at an Arabian restaurant. So, it's amazing how, as I said, our culture is steeped so far back that the influences are going to come through in a lot of different ways. And sorry, I cut you off there, but you can go back to that question.
Yeah. And I think, like the Punjabis, Parsis also have ended up settling just about everywhere, right?
Yes.
Like I did another episode with the owner of Dotiwala Bakeries, and he was talking, there's this tiny island in the Arabian Sea somewhere, and Dotiwala supplies batasas to that guy. There is this one Indian shop there, but they actually supply batasas. So there must be a Parsi there who's actually eating these. Yeah. So let's talk about, even though we're not supposed to, let's talk about Dhansak, which actually seems to be on its way to kind of becoming an international dish. I was doing some research for this show, and I saw this recipe which had pineapple rings in it. And another famous UK chef has actually made a Dhansak version with dates, tamarind, and pomegranate. What are your thoughts on it? Because when this UK chef posted it on this Facebook group, there was this Parsi Facebook group, and they were horrified, and they were thinking of writing a collective sort of letter to the said chef saying, how can you kind of like do this to our flagship dish? So
again, it comes back to the evolution of a dish, right? And your understanding of its roots, perhaps.
Yeah.
And so sometimes I serve a dal, a lentil stew,
right,
which is exactly like a dhansak in terms of flavor.
Yep.
It's just that all those grains are left whole. I like the way that they have a texture in the mouth.
Right.
If I were to call that a dhansak, I may get some flack.
Yeah.
But I guess we need to now understand that cuisines evolve, and so do people. And people's tastes evolve. And while you do hold on to your tradition, which is a great thing, I don't see anything wrong with people trying to experiment with anything.
But will you have dhansak with pineapple rings in it?
I would not have anything with pineapple in it.
So then, as an extension of that, authenticity versus like innovation. Like, is there a line that we need to toe, or is just about everything okay then? So
let's ask a rhetorical question. Where's the dhansak from?
Yeah.
And then we look at it that way.
Yeah.
So did we come to India, pick up a traditional Gujarati recipe, put some meat into it and call it our own. And then we go back to tradition and say that, no, this is ours for the past 3,000 years.
Yeah.
That's the question, right? So tradition, yes, of course. I would say every community needs to hold on to it, to pass it down to the next generation. And but one mustn't, be too fixated on the fact that it's okay if people change things about.
Yeah. There's even, I think, Marks and Spencer's or some other brand is recently coming up with something like a Dhansak burrito, I've heard.
Oh, wow.
I don't know. Maybe that's taking it a little far. I don't know.
Maybe.
So, with Cafe Zoe, when you were with it, you ended up creating a really amazing identity around the space. So could you maybe share, like, as a startup, how does one go about creating this identity? How important is the food you cook related to that identity versus the branding or the story or anything else?
So Cafe Zoe happened at a time when there was a lot of, a recession had recently happened. There was a lot of people coming back to India. They needed a space that would kind of relate to the places that they lived in abroad. And the food and the simplicity of the food and nice atmosphere, great ambience, events and things happening, so that it became a community space, so to say. And that's what we created at that time. And the food, of course, being as simple, and it was meant to be very comfortable. It was meant to be comfort food, but with a slight elevation, just so that you do feel special when you go out to eat.
Correct. So you also started a program called the One Night Stand Chef back at Zoe. So how has that been? Have you seen any success with the people who came there and things like that?
I think we did about, I can't really remember, I think we did about 6 or 7.
Wow.
And 4 or 5 of them have gone on to either start their own business in food.
That's really amazing.
Or become very, very well acclaimed chefs in another city right now. And, someone got into baking and started her own baking business. So I think that was a huge success.
Yeah.
And for me also, it was a wonderful learning, because to find people from different walks of life coming in, different experiences, they also bring a lot of understanding to this business, because when you look at it day on day from the same side, it's very different. And then someone walks in from, say, an advertising background, and then totally changes your perspective on it. And so that was a wonderful thing that we did. And
Okay. And I read in an interview where you mentioned, that Noor Mahmudi and Sarvi are like your favorite hole-in-the-wall places. So are they still your favorites?
Oh yeah, I was planning to go there this morning, and then plans changed.
Okay. But what about any Parsi joints? Like
Parsi joints, I love going to Jimmy Boy.
Okay. And having the classic, the patru over there, or just...
I generally don't get the patru. With whoever else is with me, I try and push it onto them so I can have the sarya. But otherwise, I'm more of a mori dal, chawal, and fried fish, or a kolmi patio. And so as a chef, I don't know how to cook Parsi food. Yeah.
Oh,
for me, Parsi food at home is either my mom or my wife cooking. So I have absolutely no clue how to cook Parsi food.
That's quite the admission. So, but do you still feel, that the best Parsi food is actually found in someone's home? Like when I've been doing catering, I actually put down a disclaimer to people saying that, look, my dhansak is not going to be like your grandmom's dhansak. Like, I don't want to get into that argument at all with them.
No, so dal is dal, and everybody's dal is, their mother's dal is the best. It's what you grew up with.
Yeah.
So, then be it a dhansak, be it a patio, be it anything, everyone's going to have a way to do it. And that's the best part of food, because, why go and eat the same dhansak in 6 different houses when you can have 6 different dhansaks?
Correct. So, hospitality, is all about clients, and all of them come with their fair share of quirks.
Oh, yeah?
So, do you have like a crazy client story? I would have normally put this as a crazy Parsi client story, but for you that wouldn't sort of apply. But would you have any sort of stories to share?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's now been almost 22 years in the kitchen, and in the restaurants and stuff like that. But yeah, I mean, what really irks me is when people come in without any understanding of a certain thing and then they ask for something like, I want an aglio olio, but no garlic.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, that's half the dish gone. Now what else do you want?
My husband got asked, so he was a flight purser, and he got asked to give him a whiskey on the rocks without the ice.
Without the ice, lovely.
And he was just like, so it's just whiskey then.
Yeah, it's amazing how, I don't know, people just maybe they don't think beyond, how they're framing their words and like, I want a whiskey on the rocks and then no ice. It's just ridiculous. Yeah, so I've had my aglio olio, no garlic. So it's spaghetti with oil.
Okay.
Enjoy.
So just to end up, one of the questions I ask everyone who comes on the show is Dhansak really your favorite dish? Or if you had to have like one last Parsi dish before you died, what would it be?
Dhansak will always sit on one of my favorite dishes.
Okay.
For me, it's a very comforting, it's got meat in it, it's got its vegetables and I don't have to look at them when I eat them. It's perfect. Yeah. One Parsi dish that I have to eat before I die, Karyani jelly.
Karyani jelly. That's quite a...
That sounds nice.
That's quite a nice one. I haven't actually had that one. I've heard it's...
Just the thought of it just is amazing, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, well, this has been amazing. Thank you so much, Viraf, for coming. And thank you. It's been a pleasure.
It's been a pleasure too. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much.
Janice, what do you think couples did before TV was invented?
I don't know, go for walks on the beach, long drives, fancy dinners, have more sex maybe?
But what did we do when we decided to move in together? We debated between the Chromecast and the Fire Stick.
We gave up on sleeping early so we could stay up watching true crime shows.
We got ourselves 3 cat babies.
And basically became the cutest couch potatoes around.
Okay then.
In case you guys still haven't got it, we are a TV crazy, Netflix loving, binge watching Mr. and Mrs.
I'm Anirudh Guha.
I'm Janice Iquera.
And if like us you snort TV for breakfast, lunch and dinner, this is the podcast for you.
Tune in every Thursday on the IVM podcast app or wherever it is that you get your podcast from. This is
Mr.
and Mrs.
Binge Watch.
Sachin Tendulkar, Virat Kohli, Don Bradman, and now Cyrus Brocha. Okay, probably not in the right company. I mean, Don Bradman is Australian. But it's called Cyrus Says, a wonderful show about everything. Find the show on the IVM Podcast app, ivmpodcast.com, or wherever you listen to podcasts. Cyrus Says is brought to you by Storytel. Keep in mind that if you go through storytel.com/IVM, you get a 30-day free trial as against a 14-day free trial on the link. All right, it's very simple. All you got to do is log on to storytel.com/IVM. Millions and millions and millions of stories, many written by me.